My company spent 10 minutes praising my coworker for a flawless $4 million office build, put his face on a slide, gave him a standing ovation, and then pulled me aside and quietly asked if I could take a look at a few issues before the client noticed. That was the first time that day anyone said my name. I'm a project engineer for a commercial construction firm. We do those shiny corporate build-outs you see on LinkedIn posts. Glass meeting rooms, exposed ceilings, fake plants that cost more than my car payment. On paper, I'm not important. I'm not a director, not a senior PM. My title sits somewhere in the middle, in that gray space where all the actual work lives. My job is simple to explain and hard to do. I'm the one who makes sure what we sell on a slide deck doesn't collapse in real life. I live in spreadsheets, schedules, RFIs, submittals, permit comments, site walks, and those 9 p.m. calls where some subcontractor finally admits they might be a week behind. My coworker Matt is the opposite of me in almost every way. If I'm the guy in the back with the laptop, he's the one at the front of the room with the laser pointer. Perfect hair, loud laugh, never without some story about this one time on a job in Chicago. He knows how to say synergy and not sound like he's joking. Clients love him. Upper management loves him. He remembers birthdays and golf handicaps. I remember fire codes. When we landed the $4 million project, there was never any doubt who would be on the slide and who would be behind it. The client was a fast-growing tech company taking 2.5 floors in a downtown high-rise. Open plan, phone booths, fancy lighting, new mechanical systems tied into an older building that was never designed for this kind of load. Tight schedule, tight tolerances, tight neighbors. The kind of project you brag about at industry events. Matt was the project manager of record. I was support. In practice, that meant Matt handled the showmanship. He led the kickoff, wrote the glossy updates, smoothed things over when the client's VP of something important got nervous about colors. I handled everything that could actually shut the job down. I was the one on site at 6 in the morning when the concrete pour got rescheduled without notice. I was the one arguing with the city inspector about rated corridors. I was the one rebuilding the schedule when a supplier's lead time jumped from 3 weeks to 9 because someone forgot to lock pricing. There's this moment in every project where you decide if you're going to save people from their own optimism or just let the math do what it does. On this job, I chose to save them. When Matt promised the client, "We can absolutely still hit your June 1st move-in," after they added a full executive suite and more glass than a jewelry store, I didn't contradict him in front of 20 people. I went back to my desk, tore the schedule apart, and rebuilt it with overlapping trades and Saturday work. I spent the next 2 months bribing electricians with coffee and begging the elevator operator for extra lifts. On the weekly calls, Matt said things like, "We're tracking well," and "no major risks at this time." Meanwhile, my inbox looked like a triage ward. I'm not saying he never did anything. He was good at keeping the client calm, and sometimes that's half the battle. But the gap between whose fingerprints were on the actual work and whose name would go in the quarterly slide deck, that gap was getting wider every week. By the time we got TCO, temporary certificate of occupancy, I was exhausted in that way that doesn't go away after one weekend. We were technically on time. Some punch list items were still open, some things weren't perfect, but we hit the date on the contract. The client moved people in. LinkedIn filled up with photos of their new collaborative hub. Inside our company, the project was instantly labeled a win. The quarterly all-hands was 2 weeks later. We rent a large conference room, drag in bad coffee and worse muffins, and the leadership team runs through their ritual. Revenue numbers, pipeline, safety stats, the one mandatory slide about culture. I stood against the wall near the back, holding a paper cup that smelled like burnt beans and detergent. Our director, Linda, clicked to the project spotlight section. A glossy render of the client's office filled the screen. Then Matt's face appeared next to it. Professional headshot, arms folded, that practiced half smile. Now this, Linda said, is what execution looks like. People clapped. Someone let out a little cheer. Linda talked about how we delivered a $4 million office build on time, under budget, with stellar feedback from the client. She mentioned the complexity of the mechanical system, the fast-track schedule, the coordination with building management. Every detail she used as proof of Matt's brilliance was something I could trace back to a moment at 10 p.m. when I was fixing a problem he hadn't even noticed. My name didn't come up, not once, not even as a throwaway in the team. Matt did what you're supposed to do. He made a modest face, raised his hands a little as if to say, "Oh, come on." But he didn't correct the record. When Linda pointed at him and said, "This is the standard," he just smiled wider. I stood there listening to people around me whisper about how that guy is going places. It's not like I'd expected a trophy. I'm not naive. I know how this business works. The loud ones get the credit. The quiet ones get, "We couldn't have done it without you," in a hallway, and maybe a 2% bump at review time. But something about that slide, about hearing the words, "no major issues," when I could still smell solvent from the rushed floor patching in my clothes, it hit different. It felt less like being overlooked and more like being erased. After the presentation, people drifted out into smaller conversations. Someone joked with Matt about buying the next round of drinks. Linda checked her phone, frowned, checked it again. She caught my eye for just a second, and there was something there I didn't recognize. Not the easy confidence from the stage. Something tighter. "Alex," she called over the noise, "can you hang back for a minute? I just need you for something." Casual tone. Almost an afterthought. I tossed my empty cup, nodded, and waited near the side wall while the room slowly emptied. Matt was still at the front, pretending to be annoyed at the attention while soaking up every second. A couple of junior engineers tried to get his advice on managing big-ticket clients. He gave them phrases I'd heard in the kickoff deck. Eventually, the crowd thinned. People grabbed laptops, joked about deadlines, and filtered out. The door closed softly behind the last group. The air in the room changed the way it does when applause dies, and someone finally mentions the bill. Linda walked back toward us, heels clicking on the carpet like she was trying to remember how to move without an audience. Matt stayed by the screen, arms folded, watching her with a strange mix of smug and worried. She didn't sit. She didn't smile this time. "Okay," she said, looking from him to me. "We've got a situation with your $4 million masterpiece." She reached behind her, pushed the conference room door until it latched with a quiet, solid click. That was the moment I realized the presentation we'd just sat through and the project I'd actually lived were about to collide. Linda stood there for a moment, one hand pressed lightly against the door as if she needed it to stay upright. When she finally turned toward us, her expression no longer matched the confident woman who just bragged on stage about flawless delivery. "There are discrepancies," she said. "The client sent over a list this morning. HVAC noise complaints, lighting controls misconfigured, 2 meeting rooms out of acoustic spec, and a bunch of issues with the executive suite move-in." Matt's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice smooth. "We knew they'd nitpick. It's normal after a big move. They'll settle." Linda didn't blink. "They're not settling." She walked to the table, tapped her iPad, and slid it so we could see the screen. A forwarded email, time-stamped 7:12 a.m. Subject: urgent, outstanding issues and budget clarifications. The client's director, Julia, wasn't screaming. She didn't need to. Her wording was surgical. Inconsistencies, unapproved substitutions, misaligned financials, pending documentation required for compliance. My stomach tightened. Unapproved substitutions, misaligned financials. Those weren't normal post-move punch list items. Those were the kind of phrases that triggered audits. I kept quiet, letting the silence stretch. Matt finally spoke, his tone slipping. "Julia's overreacting. She's under pressure. You know how their exec team is." Linda set the iPad down with a controlled, irritated precision. No, what I know is that I forwarded all your status summaries to the board last night. They saw green lights across the board. They saw under budget. They saw ahead of schedule. And now the client is asking why the final mechanical change order doesn't match what we promised. Why the millwork specs changed without a signed approval. Why the AV room was declared complete when their integrator says half the racks were delivered late and undocumented. Her eyes flicked to me. And I know Alex didn't approve any of that. Matt laughed, sharp and humorless. Come on, Alex signs off on everything. He's the detail guy. I met his eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I sign off when I receive documentation. I never saw change orders for the material swaps. I never saw a revised AV schedule. And I definitely never saw anything that would justify calling the project under budget. Matt's face reddened. You always nitpick. We had to move fast. Linda asked for clean executive summaries. I provided them. And I trusted, Linda cut in, that you weren't hiding risk behind polished slides. The room settled into a heavy quiet. Matt shifted his weight from one foot to the other, looking everywhere except at us. Linda exhaled. The client wants a full breakdown by end of week. If they escalate this to their CFO, if they bring in third-party auditors, we're exposed badly. Then she said it. Alex, we need you to fix this. There it was. The applause upstairs was still echoing in the hallway, and here I was, suddenly indispensable. I felt something inside me harden, but my voice stayed even. Fix what, exactly? Linda hesitated, which told me everything. We need you to go through all project documentation, reconcile schedules, budgets, specifications, clean it up before the client digs deeper, clarify the substitutions so they look intentional. If signatures are missing, get them. If dates don't match, adjust as needed. Just bring the file into alignment with what we presented. I stared at her. Adjust dates, I repeated. That's not what I meant, she said too fast. Just make it consistent. And if the facts aren't consistent? I asked. Linda didn't answer. Matt jumped in, desperate. Alex, it's not a big deal. We're talking about paperwork, optics. Everyone does this. Just help smooth it out. If we tank this relationship, we lose a multi-year account. I looked at him. Really looked. The golden boy who basked in applause 30 minutes ago was now sweating through his shirt collar. I realized then he wasn't asking me to fix the project. He was asking me to absorb the consequences. And that was the moment something shifted in me. Subtle, but final. All right, I said calmly. I'll take the lead on resolving this. Matt exhaled in relief. Linda nodded too quickly. Good. We knew we could count on you. But, I added, we're doing this my way. Her eyebrows lifted. I want everything in writing, I continued. Every request, every clarification, every document you want me to adjust. I need full access to the shared drive, subcontractor files, budget revisions, RFI logs, and the email threads you two have with the client. No surprises, no verbal instructions, and I'm not backdating, rephrasing, or hiding anything. I'll fix what's real, not what's convenient. Matt opened his mouth, but Linda raised a hand to silence him. She studied me for several seconds, realizing I wasn't bluffing. Fine, she said. You'll get whatever you need. One more thing. I also want direct communication with Julia. If she has questions, she comes to me. Not filtered through either of you. Matt nearly choked. Why the hell? Linda cut him off again. Fine, she repeated. I'll authorize it. She reached for her iPad, already eager to end the conversation. Send me a list of what you need. Start today. The board wants reassurance by Friday. I nodded once. I'll send an email in an hour. They both seemed relieved. They shouldn't have been, because I wasn't just going to fix their mess. I was going to document exactly how it happened. As I left the conference room, my phone buzzed with a calendar invite from Linda. Project remediation, daily sync. Matt was added automatically. I declined it and sent a replacement meeting. Documentation review, Alex only. Updates via email. Small pushback, but deliberate. Halfway to my desk, I slowed. A tiny realization slipped into my mind, like a drop of water finding a crack. The moment I insisted everything be written, verifiable, and transparent, I'd changed the entire balance of power. They didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. I didn't start with the files Matt gave me. I started with the ones he didn't. We stored all project documentation in a shared structure: budgets, RFIs, submittals, schedules, compliance logs. But there was a second place, a private folder only managers used, the kind where people stash drafts they don't want anyone else to see. Linda gave me access reluctantly. By noon, I understood why. The first red flag wasn't dramatic. It was a date. A mechanical change order showed a cost that didn't match the line item we'd submitted to the client. The delta wasn't huge on its own, $9,400. But the date stamp had been modified in late May, 2 weeks after the cutoff for client approvals. That meant the client had technically never agreed to pay it. I opened the email history. Nothing from Matt forwarding it to Julia. Nothing from Linda requesting clarification. Just a single message from Matt to the mechanical subcontractor. Hold this for the final package. We'll reconcile later. Reconcile how? Where? With whom? No answer. As I kept digging, the pattern repeated. A flooring substitution logged as client preference, but never actually approved. An AV delay hidden behind a fake status note. Acoustic panels downgraded to a cheaper material. The difference barely noticeable to the untrained eye, but definitely noticeable to a CFO reading invoices. Each time I found something, I created a folder and dropped the files inside. Each folder had 2 subfolders. 1. Facts, original documents, raw emails, timestamps. 2. Internal interpretations, the pretty summaries Matt and Linda had presented. Side by side, they looked like 2 different realities. By day's end, I had built a 47-page audit trail. Not commentary, not opinion, just facts aligned chronologically, showing exactly how the perfect project had been assembled out of partial truths and strategic omissions. The next morning, I sent Linda and Matt a summary email, attaching preliminary discrepancies list, needs review. I didn't copy the client yet, not until the picture was complete. Matt stormed to my desk less than 10 minutes later. "What the hell is this supposed to be?" he hissed, waving his phone. "You're making it look like I lied." I closed my laptop calmly. "You didn't tell the client about the change orders. That's not me making it look like something. That's simply what happened." "You're blowing this out of proportion," he snapped. "No," I said. "I'm putting the proportions back where they belong." His expression shifted from anger to fear, a subtle tremor around the jawline. He didn't argue after that. At noon, I walked the site again, even though the job was technically complete. I wanted eyes on every space the client had flagged. The HVAC noise was real. The meeting rooms did bleed sound. The AV racks were missing proper documentation. The issues weren't invented. They were symptoms of the shortcuts taken to keep the schedule pretty. As I stood in the executive suite, breathing in the faint smell of fresh carpet glue, a thought hit me with surprising clarity. This wasn't a project that had gone wrong. This was a project that had been presented wrong. And then something in me cracked, not with anger, but with absolute resolve. That night, I wrote the report. Not the sanitized internal version Linda expected. Not the help Matt look good version he assumed I'd produce. A real one. Each issue was paired with the policy or contract clause it violated. Each timeline error was matched with its original timestamp. Each substitution listed with its financial impact, whether paid or unpaid. Every omission tied back to the person responsible for communicating it. And at the end, a simple recommendation section. Bring all change orders to compliance review. Notify the client with full transparency. Complete rework at no cost where contractually required. establish oversight to prevent future misrepresentation. At 7:48 p.m., I attached the document to an email and copied the company's QA officer, legal counsel, and the client's director, Julia. No dramatics, no accusations, just facts. Then I clicked send. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence you get before glass breaks. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. 3 missed calls from Linda, 1 from Matt, and an email from the CEO's chief of staff, marked high priority. At 8:15 a.m., the QA officer appeared at my desk. "Alex, we need you in conference 6B. Inside were 2 people I'd never met. Internal audit. They shook my hand, thanked me for the documentation, and told me to walk them through the timeline. They weren't hostile. They weren't warm either. They were precise, methodical, and very interested in my folders. Matt wasn't invited. Linda wasn't invited. For the first time, the company was talking to the person who actually knew what had happened. We spent hours going line by line. When we were done, one of the auditors closed her notebook softly. The kind of soft that means final. "Thank you, Mr. Hale," she said. "This will move forward today." By noon, the client sent an official escalation. By 2 p.m., the board demanded a complete investigation. By 4 p.m., Matt was removed from all active projects. Linda stepped back pending review. Walking out of the building that evening, I felt drained, not triumphant. There was no victory, no personal attack, no revenge fantasy fulfilled. But as the elevator doors closed, I realized something quietly enormous. They thought I was the one cleaning up their mess. I was actually revealing its shape, and it was only then that I understood. Nothing about this was going to go back to normal. I didn't go back to my desk after the audit meeting. There was nothing left to do except wait for consequences to finish, rippling outward, and they rippled fast. By the next morning, Linda's name vanished from internal calendars. Her projects were quietly reassigned. HR sent a vague announcement about organizational changes, the kind that means a lawyer drafted every word. Matt's status updated from project manager to on leave, pending review. No explanation, no farewell email. People noticed the vacuum immediately. In construction, leadership changes aren't subtle. They shake the whole building. When directors disappear, rumors travel faster than elevators. But this time, there were no jokes, no winks, just a quiet understanding spreading through the office. Someone had finally opened the books. Around noon, I stepped outside for air. The street was loud with traffic, but my head felt strangely calm, like someone had turned down a frequency that had been buzzing for months. That's when I saw the email. Subject, quick chat, if you're available today. It was from Julia, the client's director, the one whose list of discrepancies kicked off everything. She suggested meeting at a cafe 2 blocks away. No formal tone, no urgency, just a simple, "You've earned a conversation." I went. Julia was already there, in a corner booth, hair tied back, sleeves rolled. She looked like someone who hadn't slept well but finally understood why. "Alex," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you." Not the polite thank you clients give after a successful punch list. This one carried weight, the kind that acknowledges someone told the truth when it was easier not to. I sat. She pushed a cup of coffee toward me. "When we started the project," she began, "I kept getting 2 stories, the clean one in the weekly calls, and the real one I could feel under the surface. I never had the data to point to. Not until your report." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "You didn't just save us from a mess. You saved us from making future decisions based on lies." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. She leaned in slightly. "We're expanding. 3 more floors next year. 2 in Chicago, 1 in Austin. We need someone who can manage projects without theatrical updates and magic spreadsheets." Someone who understands contractors but isn't loyal to their bad habits. Someone who knows what the truth looks like before it becomes a problem. I felt my heartbeat shift. Not faster, just heavier. "That's why I asked you here," she said. "We'd like to offer you a position on the client side, Director of Workplace Projects." The title hit me gently like a cushion landing. High-level responsibilities, long-term planning, authority to choose vendors, salary that would change things, a team, influence, stability, real power, not spotlight power. "Think about it," she added. "I'm not asking for an answer today, but I know what you did, and I know what it meant." That night I didn't sleep much. Not from anxiety, from clarity. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. Still, I finished what I'd started. I cooperated fully with the internal audit. I answered every question from legal. I provided every document. I made sure the rework plan for the client was accurate, schedule realistic, and compliant. Not to protect Linda or Matt, to protect the people who would live in that office and trust the building wouldn't fail around them. A week later, the company sent an all-staff update. "After our internal review, we've parted ways with Matt R. and Linda M. We are implementing new compliance procedures effective immediately. No spin, no excuses." 2 careers ended not because I wanted revenge, but because reality finally caught up. After that, the CEO called me into a glass conference room overlooking the city. He was polite, even warm. He thanked me for my integrity, my commitment to the company, my honesty under pressure. Then he slid a folder across the table, a promotion, a raise, a retention bonus, all of it framed with soft phrases like mutual loyalty and helping us rebuild trust. But the unspoken request behind it was clear. Stay. Keep being the person who cleans up what others break. Don't make noise. Don't leave with your truth. For the first time in my career, I wasn't tempted. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "Truly, but I'm resigning." He blinked slowly, as if recalibrating. "We can negotiate." "It's not about compensation," I said. He sat back, realizing negotiation wouldn't work on someone who had already let go. "You're making a mistake," he said softly. Not a threat, but a genuine belief. "No," I replied. "I'm making a decision." 2 weeks later, I walked out of the building for the last time. A cardboard box under one arm. My badge clipped to the top. No applause. No presentation. No spotlight. Just peace. 3 months into my new role with the client, I visited one of our active sites. A clean, organized construction floor with proper signage, accurate schedules, and subcontractors who respected the process because they knew they'd be held accountable. My job wasn't to chase crises anymore. My job was to prevent them. And the best part, I got to choose which vendors made the shortlist. My old company was still technically eligible, but now they competed on actual performance, not polished updates. No shortcuts, no stories, no "we'll reconcile later," just honest numbers. The irony was almost poetic. By doing the right thing once, I'd changed the ecosystem around me. Not out of revenge, out of alignment. One afternoon, as I walked through the polished new corridor of a project that was actually on time and on spec, a thought settled into me with the softness of a closing door. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped holding them up. And the moment I did, everything that wasn't built to last finally fell, exactly the way it was always going to.